Hey podcasters, welcome to the Shaun Herr show, where we learn how to break the slimming cycle by mastering your mind, meals and movement, helping you finally achieve a balanced lifestyle and long-lasting results. This is part 2 of a series I'm calling All About Calories. See, all fat loss and gain comes down to something called energy balance. Calories in versus calories out. This is the underlying principle, and every diet you've ever done boils down to this principle, even if you think it doesn't. In today's episode, we're going to look at 6 popular diets and break them down to show that no matter what the method or system, it's the principle of calorie balance underlying that method that makes the difference. It's actually really funny seeing how all the systems and methods break down to the same few basic elements. They've just got a different skin and branding over the top. If you haven't already listened to part 1, go back and listen to that. Otherwise, there might be a few things we talk about in this episode that you don't quite understand. But if you have, let's crack on. The first diet we're looking at has been one of the most popular and prevalent diets throughout the decades. We're starting with good old Weight Watchers. There have been various iterations and versions of Weight Watchers over the years, and we're going to look at the Smart Points system. In a nutshell, here's how it works. You get 30 points a day, and maybe a couple of extras depending on your height and weight and all that. Every food has a given number of points, then all you need to do to lose weight is not go over your points. The number of points a food is worth is based on its calorie content, protein content, saturated fat content, and sugar content. I don't know the exact formula. That secret's probably more heavily guarded than the Coca-Cola recipe, but it essentially starts with the calorie density. If a food is more calorie dense, meaning more calories per 100 grams, it's worth more points. Then if it's got a good high protein content, that reduces the points value. And if it's got a high saturated fat or sugar content, that increases the points value. It makes sense. That's basically the same as what I recommend to people. Eat fewer calorie dense foods, more nutrient dense foods, increase your protein intake, and cut back on saturated fat and refined sugars. So how does this result in weight loss? Well, for starters, if you're eating fewer calorie dense foods, your overall calorie intake will probably be lower. And thinking back to last week's podcast, we know that if your overall calorie intake is lower than your overall calorie output, you lose weight. Nice, easy start. The next thing is that if you're also increasing your protein intake, protein makes you feel full. And if you're feeling full, you're less likely to snack and overeat. Again, reducing your overall calorie intake. And finally, products with high saturated fat and sugar contents also tend to be your calorie dense, highly processed, hyper palatable and easy to overeat foods. So again, if you're not eating foods that are easy to overeat, you're less likely to overeat, therefore reducing your overall calorie intake. And that's it. In a nutshell, the Smart Point system is just a simple way to cut back on calorie dense foods, improve your protein intake and reduce your overall calorie intake, resulting in weight loss as intended, thanks to the principle of calorie balance. This next diet has been around since the 60s and is credited with kicking off the low-carb diet trend. Yep, we're talking about good old Atkins. You probably know that the general idea of the Atkins diet is to reduce your carbohydrate intake, which is what I just said about the low-carb thing. But what you maybe don't know is the extent to which you're expected to cut back on carbs, and that there are 4 phases you're supposed to go through to get yourself to the carb-phobic promised land. Before we get into the phases and all that, I just want to point out that on the Mayo Clinic post about the Atkins diet, there's a little subtitle that says why you might want to follow the Atkins diet. And the first point of that is if you like the types and amounts of food featured in the diet, which on the flip side means if you like foods that aren't featured, like pizza and pasta and bread and cakes and cookies and other nice things like that, don't fucking do Atkins, or keto for that matter, but we'll get back to keto in a minute. Phase 1 is the induction phase. You can almost think of this as the detox phase, as it would be referred to in a lot of modern diets. In this super strict initial phase, you cut your carb intake right down to 20 grams a day, 15 of which should come from vegetables. For reference, a banana contains 23 grams of carbs, which means you're not eating any fruit. You do phase 1 for around 2 weeks. Phase 2 is the balancing phase, where you add in some nutrient-rich carbs like berries. Oh, yeah, you're not allowed berries in phase 1. Fuck if I know why. You couldn't fit them in anyway, so don't worry about it. You do this until you're around 10 pounds away from your goal weight. Before we go on to phase 3, I just want to take a minute to point out how daft that last part is. This is something I've been going deep on recently, so I may as well bring it up again. You don't know what your goal weight is. It's just a number you basically made up. You might know what your goal size is, as in clothes size, or what your goal physique is that you see reflected back at you in the mirror, but you have no idea what that weighs. So often I hear people saying they've reached their goal weight, but they still feel flabby, so now they want to tone up. And that's because your goal weight isn't your goal. The way you intend to look when you now tone up is your goal. So why not just head towards that in the first place instead of going on this miserable detour? You don't know what your goal look weighs. So to come out of phase 2 when you're 10 pounds away from that made up number is a completely irrelevant idea. But anyway, rant over onto phase 3. Phase 3 is the pre-maintenance phase. In this phase, you gradually increase the range and amount of carbs you have, bringing in things like all the other fruits, starchy vegetables like carrots. Oh yeah, carrots weren't allowed yet, by the way. And other starchy carbs like rice, potatoes, beans, and that kind of thing. You can add about 10 grams of carbs a day per week. Less than half a banana. Woo! If your weight loss slows down, well, you better stop thinking about that banana right now. And then finally, we have phase 4, the lifetime maintenance phase. Once you've hit your goal weight, you eat this way for the rest of your life, as would be the case with any diet, really. So how does the Atkins diet boil down to calorie balance? Well, let's take a look at phase 1, the induction phase. We're cutting out all carbohydrates pretty much, which means no pizza, cakes, sweets, crisps, chips, basically no over sweetened, calorie dense, easy to overeat foods, just like in Weight Watchers. So again, fewer calorie dense foods means an overall lower calorie intake, which means a calorie deficit and weight loss. And that's essentially the same throughout the rest of the phases. You gradually add in slightly more calorie dense foods so that you stay in a calorie deficit and losing weight. You see a big drop at the start, which gradually slows down as the calories increase. And if the calories go too high, you cut back again to stay in a deficit until eventually you reach your goal weight. An additional point, though, on that big drop at the start. You might have heard that when you start a diet, a lot of the initial weight loss is water. And that's true, especially if you suddenly drop your carbohydrate intake. And the reason for that is because of a bit more science. Here's a couple more fancy words for you to use with your friends so you sound clever. Your body uses glucose for energy, kind of sugar. Glucose is what you get when your body digests and breaks down its carbs. Once readily available glucose from your food is all gone, your body has to go to its backup energy, which is glucose stored in your muscles and liver in a form called glycogen. Now, every gram of glycogen in your body carries around with it 3 or 4 grams of water. So as you then use up the glucose for energy, and then the glycogen, the water that was around that glycogen goes as well. Think of it like this. Glycogen is like a packet of Jaffa cakes. Each cake is a glucose molecule. The plastic wrapper is the glycogen, which holds all those glucose molecules together, and the box is the water around the glycogen molecule. Once you've eaten all your Jaffa cakes, you chuck out the box, which is why when you reduce your carb intake and your body has to use up glycogen for energy instead, you lose a lot of what we call water weight. Isn't science fun? So just to reiterate, you lose weight on Atkins because you cut out carbs, which means fewer calorie dense foods and therefore a calorie deficit. And you also lose some water weight. Time for the next one. The one the world is currently going mad for. The keto diet, also known as the ketogenic diet. I put this after Atkins because they're basically the same, but this one makes your life even less enjoyable. See, the keto diet is essentially the induction phase, phase 1, of Atkins, but forever. You cut your carbs down to 20 grams a day, and that's it. How much more simple can it get? So again, cutting out all your calorie-dense, highly processed foods, reducing your overall calorie intake, creating a calorie deficit as a result. And again, increasing your protein intake to make you feel fuller, so you're less inclined to snack or overeat, reducing your overall calorie intake, creating a calorie deficit as a result. And the same for the water weight, which is why so many people see such big losses in their first 2 weeks of keto right now. It's mostly water, then it slows down to an actual calorie deficit related weight loss. But like I said, no carbs, forever. That means you're never having pizza again, never having chips again, never having popcorn at a movie or cake at a wedding. Fun! I want to also remember that your 20 grams of carbs a day doesn't leave much room for fruit, and you can get vegetables, yeah, but not much fruit, so not really that healthy. Oh, and by the way, here's a fun fact. Did you know that the ketogenic diet is actually a medical treatment to help control seizures in children with epilepsy? Yeah, it's not intended for fat loss at all. And for epilepsy, it's only recommended under the supervision of a dietitian. So why the fuck are you doing it to get ready for Ibiza? Next up, we've got the Zone diet. This one was big in the 90s, and you still hear of it doing a little bit of the rounds today. I felt like it'd be quite poetic to go A to Z with these diets, so that's why we're going all the way from Atkins to Zone. Get it? The Zone diet is similar to the Atkins diet in that the main point is to change your macronutrient ratio, which means the ratio between carbs, protein and fat in your diet. Carbs, protein and fat are what we call macronutrients, or macros for short. There's another fancy word for you. In the Zone diet, you shift your macronutrient ratio to 40% carbs, 30% protein and 30% fats. There's also something in there about eating 5 times a day, but the time of your meals and how often you eat is totally irrelevant, so we're not even going to talk anymore about it. To get you to that 40-30-30 macro split, there are 2 approaches. One is basically look at your plate. Make it 1/3 protein and 2/3 carbs, with a bit of fats on there in the form of oil or some avocado or nuts. The other way is something called Zone blocks, which is kind of similar to the Weight Watchers Smart Points, but sounds a bit more confusing. Anyway, as you aim for that macro split, you're also advised to eat low glycemic index, GI for short, carbs, which means they digest slowly, which means no highly processed, likely calorie dense foods. So how does it make you lose weight? Well, when you compare the macro split of the Zone diet to the macro split of the typical Western diet, known as the Western pattern diet, you can probably start to work it out. The Western pattern diet typically has a macro split of 50% carbs, 15% protein, and 35% fats. Can you guess what I'm going to say first? You guessed it, protein. You increase the amount of protein in your diet by 15%, so you're probably going to feel fuller for longer. Especially if you're expected to eat 5 times a day. You're probably not going to want to eat much if you're already feeling fairly full and it's only been about 2 or 3 hours since you last ate. So you're not as hungry. So you reduce your overall calorie intake, so you end up in a calorie deficit and lose weight. And the fact that you're only having low GI foods, so you're not eating so many calorie dense foods. So you're likely to be reducing your overall calorie intake, leading to a calorie deficit, leading to weight loss. I'm getting a bit bored of repeating myself now. Nah, I'm just kidding, this is really fun. Just out of interest, in studies where the subjects were on the same calorie intake but with different macronutrient splits, the Zone diet didn't see much benefit over other splits, just the deficit that makes the difference, isn't it? Right, this next one, there's so much that infuriates me about it with some of the daft shit they say and brainwash people into believing. So I'm going to do my best to just get through it before I rant on about it all too much. Probably still will though. See, it's on the list because I thought it was important to have this type of multi-level marketing cult diet in here somewhere. So here we go. Juice Plus. Right off the bat, we start with a 2-week detox, which, according to the little guidebook you get, is meant to cleanse your fat stores and rid your body of toxins. Fucking toxins, man. Whenever someone mentions the word detox to you, calmly remind them that they have a liver whose function it is to detoxify your body. And if it wasn't doing that properly, you'd be in hospital very soon. Anyway, 2-week detox, which is banging back their shakes and one of their recommended meals, as in recipes they give you, followed by 2 weeks where you have your own meals once a day with 2 of their shakes throughout the rest of the day, followed by, I'm not really sure what comes next. I can't really find a definitive explanation, which is maybe why so many people regain the weight they lose before too long. A typical day during the detox with their recommended meals comes out to roughly 1,000 calories a day. The recommended minimum for women, by the way, is 1,200 calories a day, but more on that next week. 24% of that 1,000 calories being protein, 19% carbs, and 57% of that being fats. That is a high proportion of fats, which again is probably not great for your health or your toilet. And 19% of carbs comes out to around 48 grams a day. So here we go. How does this make you lose weight? I think the numbers probably speak for themselves at this point, but 1,000 calories a day will obviously mean you're going to be in a calorie deficit in 99% of cases. And as we know, calorie deficit equals weight loss. Couldn't be simpler. And again, only 48 grams of carbs. It's probably going to be a decent amount of water weight loss there as well. Whew, there we go. Made it through without a rant. But I will tell you a funny story. You know how Juice Plus is a multi-level marketing scheme? Well, in case you didn't, that means somebody comes on board with Juice Plus to sell the products to other people. And I don't mean some kind of fitness or health professional comes on board, just a person. Anyway, that person sells a few products, but then eventually gets someone else to start selling products through them. So they form a little team of underlings they get a little kickback from. Then their underlings create their own little underling teams eventually, and so on, so on. Anyway, I'm on Instagram one day and a lady follows me, so I messaged her to say, hey, thanks for following me. Let me know if you ever have any questions about improving your exercise, nutrition, or mindset, or something to that effect. The lady replies, hey, I'm actually a health coach too. I sell a fantastic range of products to help improve all kinds of things like hair loss and weight gain, acne, and even get rid of those rough looking kids in your street hanging around calling you mean names. Okay, maybe I made up the last one. So it says to this lady, knowing she's talking about Juice Plus, oh, I see, that's cool. How does it work? Well, the capsules are full of fruit and veg, and the shakes are made of unicorn glitter. Now, I'm obviously exaggerating, but honestly, this is how brainwashed these people can sound sometimes. And honestly, I just feel bad because it's not their fault. They're doing the best. Anyway, I said to the lady, sounds cool. To which she replies, I think you make a great addition to my team. At which point I'm like, hold the damn phone, Capsule Queen 219. I've been a personal trainer for 6 years, spending literally thousands of pounds to educate myself on health and nutrition. If anything, you should be on my team. Anyway, I had to leave the conversation there because I knew it was just going to get messy. And that'll do for Juice Plus for today. That was actually the last diet on the list. Think of this next one as a bonus round. It's nothing to do with calories, it's just fucking stupid. And that is flat tummy tea. Now, in case you haven't heard of flat tummy tea, it's one of the many recent detox tea products aimed at young women and endorsed by Instagram influencers. You know, people who you'd hope grow a bit more of a sense of responsibility given the influence they clearly have, but I digress. Flat tummy tea is part of a range of products that are super easy, super healthy, and designed to help our babes get back on track and stay on track. At least that's what it says on the About page of their website. And actually right below that, there's a bit that says, we get it, shit happens. We're all about giving into those hashtag whoops moments as long as you get back on track tomorrow. Now that's funny, and you'll understand why in a minute. So how does flat tummy tea work? Well, it's super easy, isn't it? You drink your active tea in the morning, you drink your cleansed tea of an evening, and you drink your maintenance tea at some point in the future. And that's it. No change in your diet, no calorie deficit, no nothing. Just magic. That flat tummy just happens. And here's how. I had a little look into what the ingredients of those teas are, and one guy had kindly enough listed them all together with their effects on the body. I won't list them all. I'll just tell you that 9 out of 12 of the ingredients in the teas are known to have either diuretic or laxative effects. And in case you don't know what those words mean, it means they either make you wee or poo. Have you ever seen those videos where people put laxatives on a tray of chips at the beach and then the seagulls eat the chips and then there's just absolute chaos because the seagulls are shitting everywhere? Yeah, think of that. Remember that shit happens thing from before? Yeah, now you get why it's funny and a bit too self-aware for my liking. Right, so you're weeing and pooing more than you were before. How does that give you a flatter tummy? Well, you know when you have eaten a lot of food, like I just did actually before I wrote this, and your belly gets bigger? Well, imagine that food suddenly decided it wanted to leave your bum. Your belly, or this general area, would get smaller. Surprise, you're skinny now and wearing nappies, which, if that's a look you're trying to pull off, cool. And that's flat tummy tea. Nothing to do with creating a calorie deficit, just shitting yourself and fucking up your guts. 21st century weight loss, ladies and gentlemen. Now that we've been through all the diets, ignoring the tea, we can see that no diet is special or revolutionary. They all just take advantage of the same underlying principle, but they're presented with different methods around the principle. But even though no diet is special or revolutionary or the one, the followers of these diets can have a tendency to become dogmatic around them, to tell you that their way of losing weight is the only way to lose weight. And you're an uneducated, misinformed loser for thinking otherwise, which again is just fucking stupid. It's like in religion, and I don't mean all religion as a whole, I mean those bellends who do dumb shit. You know when you get those small factions of religion, sometimes even in the same religions, who tell you that their way of believing in God and getting into heaven is the only way to believe in God and get into heaven. You know, as though there's a guy at the top of a mountain who's going to say, well done for being a decent human and getting up to the top. Oh, but I just noticed you came up the green diamond path. You've got to come up the blue circle path if you want to be able to ride the elevator up to eternal salvation. Sorry. And then he boots you back down to hell. It's not the path you take that matters. It's the climbing of the mountain. I feel like I want to end on that really deep philosophical note. So I'm gonna. Make sure you tune in next week for the third and final part of this All About Calories mini-series. In that episode, we're going to be talking about the mythical 1200 calories, and I'll be laying out and explaining how the nutrition system I use in my online academy also boils down to the principle of calorie balance. You want to learn all my secrets? Well then, you'd better be there. If you like this episode, please do leave a like and a comment and share it with your friends if you're watching on Facebook. And if you're watching on YouTube, it would be great if you could click the like button, drop a comment and subscribe to the channel. And of course, my podcast listeners, make sure you're subscribed to the podcast. And if you haven't already, please do leave a review on iTunes or whatever platform you're listening on. All those things help boost the channel in the search results and all that stuff, so it reaches more people and I get to help more people learn about teas that make you shit yourself. Thanks for tuning in to this episode, and I'll see you in the next one.